Welcome to another Ocean Ideas Talk, brought to you by ocean lovers.
And so we have an amazing panel for you with an extraordinary story to tell. We have Valerie Taylor AM, Professor Adam Stow, Captain Gordon Scott, and Sarah Han-De-Beaux, who will be telling you more about a growing multidisciplinary citizen science project building towards Valerie Taylor's String of Pearls, a chain of connected marine sanctuaries to bring lasting protection of migration, aggression, resting, breeding, and birthing environments for the critically endangered grey nurse shark. Would you join me in welcoming the speakers as they come to the stage? We have Valerie Taylor, who is an Australian conservationist, photographer and filmmaker, an inaugural member of the Diving Hall of Fame, who was awarded the Order of Australia in 2010, and star of the current Australian National Maritime Museum exhibition, Valerie Taylor, An Underwater Life. Valerie. We also have Dr. Gordon Scott, who is the PhD Program Director and Lecturer in Entrepreneurship at the Entrepreneurship Commercialisation and Innovation Centre at the University of Adelaide, with multidisciplinary experience, having conducted basic and applied research. There you go. Yes, just that. We also have Professor Adam Stow, who is a conservation biologist and behavioural ecologist who uses genetic and field-based techniques to evaluate animal dispersal and gene flow in natural systems and to assess the impact of human activities, with a focus on sharks. And last but not least, we have Sarah Han-De-Beaux, who is a keen underwater photographer with a passion for the ocean and its marine life, and is a Spot a Shark researcher. If you go along to the far end. Spot a Shark performs research on the critically endangered grey nurse sharks seen along the east coast of Australia for marine conservation. Join me in welcoming our panel. That was exhausting just doing the introductions, let alone getting into the meat of what we're talking about. I think where I'd like to start probably is with Adam and just hearing a little bit about the East Coast grey nurse shark population, and then we'll probably throw across to Gordon and talk about the updates. So tell us about the population and sort of why it's under threat.
Thank you very much. So as you mentioned, the East... Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me now. Don't have to shout. So the East Coast population of grey nurse shark, as you heard in the introduction, is critically endangered. So we're talking about a population that is at imminent threat of extinction. And there's lots and lots of data to support that. And so some of the work that I and others have done have firstly established that the East Coast population of grey nurse shark is isolated. So it's an isolated population. There's no replenishment coming in from other parts of the distribution, completely isolated. And the other fact that we know is that it's got relatively low levels of genetic variation. So genetic variation is the stuff that enables populations to adapt and change when environmental conditions change. We're currently living in the Anthropocene. We're currently living during a time with rapid environmental change. Critical to that is having the resilience of genetic variation to adapt to those changes. We're looking at a population that's isolated, has very low levels of genetic variation, and we're talking about a population where the best estimates we've got in terms of numbers of individuals suggest that there is a very real risk of ongoing declines in census numbers, like in the total number, and also an ongoing decline in genetic variation. Now, the grey nurse shark is a species that, for many of us, is iconic on the east coast of Australia. It's a species that is valuable in terms of ecotourism, and it's a species that is critical to ecological processes. And I won't sort of take too many themes in one go here, but in terms of the population, we're talking about a population that has shrunk by more than 90% in imminent threat of extinction, and I better leave it there.
Gordon, tell us about this, the population change and the threat of extinction and the role of the string of pearls.
Okay. Am I on? Can you hear me? Hello? No. Is there... Found the on switch. Okay, just to elaborate on what Professor Stow said and also Robin's question is, this string of pearls has evolved over the last 2 or 3 years as our group starts to grow around what Valerie's goals are. And we're looking for the string of pearls is our wish and hopes and aim is to get a long string of marine parks along the east coast to totally encapsulate the area of the grey nurse shark migration. For those who don't know, the sharks will migrate up and down the east coast. So when they're typically south of about Coffs Harbour now. During the summer, they'll start to move north through the winter. They'll still be on the east coast of New South Wales, but they'll move into the southern Queensland sites for breeding and pupping and feeding as well. So being a marine park, and let me just quantify this for everyone if you don't know, a marine park is nothing like a terrestrial national park. Okay, a terrestrial national park means no take. Photographs, leave footprints behind, take nothing else. Marine parks go all through these different colour regimes. The only marine park typically is what we call a green zone, which is a no-take area, all right? And they are a very, very small percentage of the marine parks we get here. And what we're aiming for is green zones or marine sanctuaries, which is look but don't touch, and that's what we want. So for everyone's just getting slightly off track here, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park is very little of it's actually protected. It's so much of it is actually blue zones, the two dark blue and light blue, and yellow zones, which is basically take what you want. It's not quite that simple, but please don't for a nanosecond think the Great Barrier Reef's a marine park. It's not. It's basically typically open for fishing and extractive practices, and very little of it's actually fully protected. So please take that home and think about where we're going forward with our oceans. So it's a string of pearls. It's this endless chain or joined chain of marine parks to protect the environment. The grey nose shark is a protected species. Thank you very much to Valerie Taylor. She's the person that got the grey nose sharks protected. And it was the first shark in the world that was afforded protected status. All right, and this is this wonderful lady here on my left. So that is to get the environment which the sharks need for their very survival protected. And the last grey nose shark recovery plan, which finished on midnight December 31st last year, which went over for 10 years, it states very clearly in there that if you identify where grey nose sharks aggregate, or they are, it must be gazetted a marine park. We have not had a green zone gazetted for grey nose sharks for 17 years in this country. All right, so the governments are sitting on their hands. Just to get back, the three-prong that we've got is the census we're doing. So in a snapshot in time, we will have divers in the water when weather allows on one day, 4 times a year, and this will get better as we go forward. This is a building project, and every dive shop that uses grey nose sharks as part of their dive operation visits, and they'll call the numbers in. Okay, so we can get instant snapshot of where the sharks are, what numbers are on the sites that we know about, and then we're collating that data, and that will increase going forward. Sorry, I'm getting a bit off. Can I keep going?
Briefly.
Yeah. And the last part, we've got is the ID photographs, and Sarah's going to talk about that fairly shortly, and also the DNA database the divers will be collecting as part of our community science project. We'll be collecting grey nose shark teeth because they do shed their teeth, and they'll be sending that forward to Adam, so he'll now get shark teeth to start doing more DNA extracting. Is that? Yep. Okay.
Sarah, I will come to you in a moment because I want to ask about spotted shark. But Valerie, firstly, thank you for wearing a string of pearls. It's a very visual demonstration of what we're talking about. But secondly, you've been playing a role in shark conservation for decades. How can everybody else play a role? What's the role of community science, of getting involved? How do we get involved to help?
It's very simple. Very simple. Go out there if you can dive or snorkel and add to the numbers of visitors to the grey nurse shark habitat sites along the coast. It's not difficult. Usually the water is clear and it's not all that deep, maybe 10 to 20 metres at the most. In 1973, my husband and I were making a television series, and one of the episodes was called The Grey Nurse Shark. We knew where all the sites were. We used to go up and down the coast in our tinny and visit them. We made a living as divers. We had to change the name to the Vanishing Grey Nurse Shark. And that's when I set to work to have them protected. The best thing you can do to get your message across, don't bother, well, write to the politicians. They won't take any notice. You go on television. You get a good story, good imagery. They'll never knock you back on a talk show or the news. Never, ever tell a lie. Absolute truth. If the opposition attacks, and it's generally fishermen, they always lie. They've never let me down. And I'm happy to say on television, you're a liar. And they say, me, oh, I'm not, well, you know what it's like, maybe. However, now, in the last few years, there have been people, mostly divers in the dive shops, and people like Gordon, working to have the gutters where the sharks live totally protected. These sharks are night feeders, they're bottom feeders. They've never attacked a human for no reason. I mean, if you've got a spear in their head and you're trying to pull them to the surface, they'll try and swim down. Back to the habitats. They hang around these gutters every day. Perfect for visitors to go and dive with them, snorkel with them. They hunt at night. I've been out twice at night, at Seal Rocks actually, with my husband to watch them hunting. They basically eat sleeping fish. I'm not saying they won't eat a fish off a line or somebody throws back after catching it, but they were hunting for sleeping fish along the bottoms, no longer in their gutters. There were no sharks in the gutters. As soon as daylight comes, they're back in their gutters, waiting for the tourists. Now, what a better shark could you have? And what a better tourist attraction. It costs nothing. It's there waiting for visitors. A farmer reaps what he sows. A fisherman just reaps. I'm sure that if we all put our minds to it, we can convince the powers that be to protect the habitats of the grey nurse. It's not a huge amount. The fishermen have still got the whole world to fish, practically. But if we want to maintain the integrity of this wonderful, very slow breeding marine animal, we have to protect where it lives. I've said my bit. I'm an old lady. I've seen what's happened to the marine world off this coast. I was a diver in the 50s. Most of you weren't even born. It was a different world then. Please help protect the grey nurse. Write to the government, fisheries. I've done all that. I've got drawers full of copies of my letters. It puts them in mind. Or if you ever have the chance, act against, say, a fisherman coming in with a grey nurse. The last one I saw to do that was at Manly, and I said, why did you do this? He said, I want the teeth. That's the story. I've said enough.
Thank you, Valerie. You created a really powerful vision there of the sharks, the grey nurse sharks in their gutters. Sarah, can you tell us how Spot a Shark is trying to capture these images and preserve them for perpetuity?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. I've also got a stand if you want to learn more after this, but Spot a Shark has been going since about 2006, and it's really predicated on the idea of getting the images, running them through a database, and seeing who that image is. So the wonderful thing about a grey nurse shark is from the moment they're born till the moment they die, they have birthmarks, very distinct patterns on their flanks, either the left or the right, and they're perfectly unique. And the great thing is from a photograph, we're not tagging, we're not hurting the animal in any way or touching it, just a photograph. If you give those photographs to us, we've got so many photos in our database, about 10,000. We run it through with the help of some artificial intelligence, and we can identify, oh, it's Harry. Excellent, I haven't seen Harry for a year. And we've really got so many of these individuals. We're about, in the database, we never kill a shark. This is the truth. So we've still got some sharks that are alive who came in 1980. I highly doubt they are alive, but unless we actually have a physical photo of a dead shark, they are always in our database as alive. So we have around 2,000 sharks. Let's say that's sort of the number that since we've been gathering photos. The photos that we get, what we're hoping to get from this information is not just estimated population, which is one of the things, but also I really like the idea of personifying the sharks, giving them a bit of a personality. I think one of the problems is we're talking about a species and you can become quite apathetic and think, oh, well, it's just a species. But when we're talking about Lumpy the shark, who's one of my favourites, or we're talking about Betty the shark, people might start to care. And these photos are really valuable at gathering that story about where they travel, what their health looks like, how long they live. It was actually just about 2-3 months ago, somebody uploaded a photo to our database. And I ran it through the data, and it was a shark that we saw the first time 14 years ago. And that was just, it's better than a drug. I'm in this database, and when I get a match like that, it makes me so happy to see that that shark is still there. There was a shark in Bondi that we took photos of a couple of years ago, and 2 weeks ago it popped up in Rainbow Beach in Wolf Rock up in Queensland, which is probably indicating that she's looking for a mate, which is really exciting. So these sharks do aggregate up and down, up and down. And one of the main problems that they encounter is, unfortunately, recreational fishing. I've got reams of photographs of the sharks with hooks in their mouth, with cuts, with ropes, you name it. The sad thing as well is that we don't really talk about what happens once they've been hooked. I've got photos of them in their final days, and it's really depressing. They basically just starve to death. We've got a lot of photos of that too. So whilst we think that catch and release is okay, perhaps it's not. Stainless steel goes in the belly, it stays in the belly and it rips them up. So I do think that protection is really important. They are quite predictable. They sit in their aggregation areas, they stay there for quite a few months, and then they move on to their next. So if we can protect those aggregation areas, we can definitely give those sharks the best possible chance.
So I immediately want to meet Lumpy and Betty, but firstly, can you tell us what's so new? So what are the new elements around Spot a Shark, and how is Valerie playing such an important role?
Well, I think it's about the community. So there's two things. One thing is the software. The software that we have is a bit old, and we're trying to move to the new artificial intelligence. Technology is moving on so fast. I mean, people can get in the water now with a mobile phone, with an underwater case, of course, but it is becoming so much more accessible to get in the water, get your photos. And the photo quality from a GoPro, like the GoPro 11s and 12s are fantastic now. So it's not that unaffordable. You can get in the water, you can take the photos, you can share the photos. And the main thing I think that Valerie and what this String of Pearls is doing for us is helping build a community. There's great people like PT who I got in contact with in the database, and she's just doing a fantastic job at documenting what's happening in Bushrangers Bay. If we get more people like that across from here, like from New South Wales to Queensland, we'll have rich data sets that the government cannot deny. It's photographic evidence, it's real. And that's what I'm looking for in Spot a Shark.
So, Valerie, any words of encouragement for people who aren't perhaps born photographers who need to start getting involved with Spot a Shark?
Well, I would like to see people like school children taken snorkelling on a good day out to see the sharks. I'd like to have someone with them. Sorry, I made a cough. You talk.
Yep.
I did want to ask Adam quickly just about overfishing, and then we can come back to that sort of role of photography. Adam, we've heard about sort of the harm that overfishing can do. How does that impact shark populations and grey nurse shark populations in particular?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Yeah, look, I think most people are aware that overfishing is a major problem globally, and we've seen the biomass of fish stocks decline very rapidly, and it's been particularly noticeable since the 1980s. So big declines in both the abundance of fish and the distribution of particular fish has severe knock-on effects throughout the whole ecosystem. And as Valerie was saying, and each of us, it's very important that we conserve the marine biodiversity, that we preserve the fish stocks, and marine protected areas are key to that. And, as a bit of a good news story, we are moving in that direction. There are marine protected areas that are being set up. There is the beginnings of a movement towards conserving marine diversity, but we've got a lot more to do. So, for example, when it comes to sharks, the marine protected areas that have been set up, for example, for reef sharks, it's been estimated that in some parts of the distribution they need to be at least 5 times the size to protect most of the individuals. So there's a start, but there's a lot of work to do to ensure that we maintain the fish stocks and we don't have those ecological cascades that can be devastating for a range of species and for ourselves in the long term, and for fishermen in the long term, because the marine protected areas have a spillover effect and it's very measurable. There are benefits to the fishing industry by having adequate marine protected areas.
We heard from Valerie a moment ago about why the grey nurse shark is so perfect for dive tourism, hanging around, almost being predictable, I think your word was. Can you tell us something, Gordon, about the economic value? We understand, I think, some of the environmental value. Tell us about the economic value of the grey nurse shark.
Thanks, Robin. The grey nurse shark is without a doubt the perfect shark for dive tourism. Unlike all the others, you don't need a cage because they don't bite you. Secondly, you don't need to chum the water or put dead animals in the water like we do with great whites to bring the shark in to feed. You find an aggregation site, the sharks are swimming around in a circle. They'll have some kind of area or an arena which won't be much bigger than this room, and quite often much smaller than this room, and they're just going round and round and round. And all you need to do as a dive tourism operator is park your customers along that route with their cameras, and they don't need to move. The sharks will just keep coming past all dive. All right. And getting to the economic value, the last economic study, and it was a fairly unscientific study, but in 2007 they came up with a number of $24 million for grey nurse shark tourism on the East Coast. We think, from what one of the professors we're working with in sustainable tourism on the Sunshine Coast, she's come up with a figure which is probably approaching $100 million, but she's very adamant, and I understand this, that this hasn't been done scientifically, and we, as part of what we're doing, is trying to get funding to have Professor Schaefer do a study, a proper scientific study along the east coast of Australia, to quantify the economic value of the grey nurse sharks to the communities where the dive shops are. All right. And one of the shops on the Sunshine Coast is run by a very famous finance man in Australia, And he's at pains to point out that the dive shop will keep about 1% of that income. The rest of it comes to the community through bars, accommodation houses, restaurants. It's jobs for our kids, all right? And it's jobs for our kids in perpetuity by just protecting one. Well, the species is protected by allowing their numbers to come back. I can talk about other stuff in a minute if you like. So the issue is, and Adam's and Valerie's said this before, the grey nose sharks we think are down to about 10% of their original population. Not down 10%, down to 10%. All right, the fish stocks in our ocean, we know for a fact, are somewhere between 1 and 10% of what they used to be. All right. Now, there's this thing called the shifting baseline syndrome, and I'm not too sure if you know about this, but this is where future generations come along. You go for a swim off Bondi, you look at the bottom of the ocean, and you go, oh, that's nice. And I'm hearing this all the time about the Barrier Reef. It's beautiful. All right, I've been diving the Barrier Reef professionally for the last 40 years, and I've seen that die before my very eyes. The East Coast is no different. Valerie will take that back to the 1950s. What we've done to our oceans is reprehensible, all right, and we're running out of time. All right, we can turn the corner, but we need to do it very, very quickly. And that's got to come down to large no-take zones like Adam's saying. And I think the best way to describe a green zone or a no-take zone is it's like your superannuation policy. The bigger it is, all right, the more fish it's going to spit out in perpetuity, and that's going to protect our oceans. And just say one more thing, the general we're talking about is sustainable fishing. And that's the key word around the place now. We need to get past sustainable fishing, because what are we sustaining? Are we sustaining the fish stocks at 1% or 10%? We need to get to regenerative fishing, where what's coming out is low enough that our fish stocks and our ocean health is coming back, all right, not where it is at the moment.
So shifting baseline syndrome is when we compare it to different data?
No, so it's what you see today, all right? If the snorkeler goes or a diver goes out the Barrier Reef, and I do get this issue with new people coming to the reef anywhere along the East Coast, and I think it's wonderful, it's lovely. It is a shadow of the former self. And I think there's an urgency for our institutions to get data off the Valerie Taylors of the world that remember what it was like, and that's back to the 1950s. Get back to our First Nations people and their storylines. What was here 50 years ago, 100 years, 200 years ago, and start winding the clock back, okay? And start bringing our oceans back, because the sickness and the ill-health in our ocean is reflected because we've taken so much out of it, and the ecosystem's falling apart.
Now, I'm going to sneak in a quick question to Sarah and then open up to the floor, because we'll have 10, 15 minutes for questions. Sarah, spot a shark. Can any marine scientist access the data, the information? How do we engage?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the first thing to say is you don't have to be a PhD like wonderful Adam. You don't have to have all of these degrees to be able to use Spotter Shark. So I don't. I did a computer science degree. Nothing to do with marine biology. It's citizen science. And this community-based science is just growing and growing. There's iNaturalist. There's all these different platforms where you can share your photos for science. So the first thing is that anyone can actually contribute their photographs. And that is so important. So anyone can contribute. And the second thing is that, yes, anyone, if they are really passionate, and look, you don't get paid. I have a full-time job, and then after work, that's when I get into my hobbyist job. And it does take a lot of hours in a week, but I love it. I don't even think of it as work. If you're like me and you love data and you love just computer stuff and you love the research, then put up your hand. I've got a stand over there. Tell me who you are. I'd love you to help us. There's tons of jobs to do. So yeah, I think really it's a very open and engaging way for anyone to contribute to science, and it will be here for many years after I'm gone. Hopefully, it will be there in perpetuity for future generations to look back on too.
The call for volunteers has gone out. All right, questions from the room. I'm going to run around the room with the microphone. Do we have any questions for the panel? Yes. Hand went straight up there.
With the hooking of the grey nurse sharks, I've heard a bit about new technologies that they disintegrate quicker, so it's not getting stuck in the stomachs. Have you seen any differences with that?
I think that would be great if we could do things like that would biodegrade. That would be awesome. I haven't seen that in what we're looking at. Most, sadly, I think stainless steel, it stays there forever and ever, and it gets tangled up in their insides, and it doesn't degrade. Other types of metal rust, and that causes them issues too. Look, if we can move towards, I fully support that. I was talking to a chap at the stand earlier and he said, why don't we go back to First Nation principles and use bone? I was like, I agree. Why aren't we using bone? I think it comes down to commercialism, right? We're a bit lazy. It's too expensive to change, but I think it's, to Gordon's point, it's too expensive not to change, right?
Any more questions from around the room? Yes, I'll come over with this lady.
So you earlier mentioned the low genetic variation of the species as a whole in Australia, because I guess the migration only goes up to Queensland and down. So how does the future look like, taking into account that there's other threats like overfishing and things like that that will impact the low genetic variation already?
I think that one's probably to me. Look, the future's what the data's saying is that we need to act on it. So with the numbers that we've got now, which are low, the level of genetic variation that we have now, which is relatively low, what we can do is predict that the genetic variation is going to decline going forward. And exactly as you said, the population is isolated. It's not getting replenished. Okay, so what it means is that we need to ensure that ongoing unnatural mortality is absolutely minimised, and herein lies the string of pearls concept, and ensuring that there is better protection for grey nurse shark habitat, and that those threatening processes like the fish hooking and incidental bycatch in the shark meshing program and so forth, that those kinds of threatening processes are absolutely minimised.
You spoke about fishing being the threat. Is it commercial fishing, recreational? Is it one more than the other? You mentioned nets. Is there one that's like the greatest threat?
There's a lot of threats from fishing, and whilst let me be a pains to tell you this is not scientific because it hasn't been studied, but as you go through the process of what we're doing, you get an I wonder moment. I talked to Adam about this, and he quite correctly said that this is not scientific, but we've caught somewhere between 90 and 99% of the food of the grey nurse shark, as well as other apex predators as well. So immediately their food supply has been decimated. They'd love to see a scientific study on that. So consequently, our sharks, their food supply is almost gone. So they're migrating up and down the coast looking for, historically I would think it's mullet and tailor and mulloway would be their preferred fish historically, all right? And, the tailor numbers and the mullet numbers have been decimated by commercial net fishing and also line fishing. So I won't point the finger at the commercial fishers, I won't point the finger at the recreational fishers. As you think about this, and I used to get very, very angry, I still am with commercial and recreational fishers, but who enables the fishers? Who gives them the right to go out there and do what they do to our oceans? And that's the politicians and the government departments whose very job it is to protect it and protect our environment in perpetuity, and they are not doing their job. So whilst I'm disappointed and angry and all those emotions with recreational and commercial fishers, it's the politicians that pass the laws and the government departments who do or do not enact upon those laws to protect our oceans or protect certain species like the grey nurse shark. And the other thing is the policing. There might be a marine park, but where's fisheries out there 24/7 making sure these fishers aren't doing what they're not supposed to be doing? So there's a lot of things which aren't getting done. So I point the finger, at fishers, but who's enabling them, letting them do what they do? Okay. So the only way we can change that is the public need to start making noise. And as I said before, we're running out of time. We don't have a lot of time left.
Hi, this question might be for Adam or anyone on the panel. Just wondering, are there any ex situ breeding programs, conservation programs ex situ for grey nurse sharks? Previous talk was about the leopard shark conservation issues. Just wondering if there's anything going on with ex situ conservation for grey nurse sharks.
Simple answer, no. So there's not much going on outside of the wild populations. Potential, maybe. There's a lot of new technologies being developed, but I wouldn't put too much hope on that. I think we've really got, instead of sort of hoping for some sort of technological solution in the future, I think we really need to act now on the threatening processes that we're fully aware of, which I can see you agree with. But there could be some potential solutions in the future, but it's not something I'd hang a lot of hope on. Absolutely, we need the habitat.
Hi. You're saying the population's not getting replenished, which means they're not having pups at all to come through? And the Western Australian population, are they getting affected by the same things?
Just to clarify, and thanks very much for your question. So when I meant... Ran out of battery. When I was talking about replenishment, I meant replenishment by migration from other parts of the distribution. So they certainly are still breeding. There is recruitment, but the recruitment is not sufficient at the moment to think that the grey nurse sharks on the road to recovery. We really need to conserve the habitat and minimise those threatening processes. So when I was talking about replenishment, it was replenishment via migration.
Can I say something? Okay. In 1973, Ron and I made a television series, and one episode was called The Grey Nurse Shark. We had to change the name to the Vanishing Grey Nurse Shark, and that's when I had the grey nurse protected. It wasn't easy, but we had film, we had imagery, and we had television. And if it's something that a politician hates, it's being put down as a monster on television, and I became good at it. And the shark was protected, the first shark in the world to ever be protected by law. Back then, we didn't have so much of a problem with fishermen. The big problem then was powerheads, divers with powerheads on the end of their spear gun. Go down, big boom, dead shark. Seal Rocks, Ron and I went down there one day out to Seal Rock itself. 62 dead grey nurse sharks, just rolling around in the current for no reason other than a boatload of guys with powerheads went out there and thought they were heroes. Maybe they thought they were heroes, killing all these peaceful, gentle sharks. Another small thing, I've done 2 night dives out at the shark area at Seal Rocks. And the sharks aren't in the gutter anymore. They are out hunting amongst the kelp and the rocks, I'd say looking for sleeping sharks. That's another story. I just wanted to explain to you how the sharks got decimated so quickly. They did build up. They started to come back in numbers. But by then, the fishermen were fishing the gutters where they live.
We
You can't
had...
expect the wild animals to live in an area when they're trying to compete with humans hunting and killing. It's very simple. Areas have to be properly protected. It doesn't have to be huge, but it does have to take in the gutters. And then they will have a chance to live, love and breed in peace. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
We had a question a moment ago about in situ breeding, and I thought I would just hand it over very quickly to Laura Simmons, who we've heard from earlier this afternoon.
Hi there. That was a really good question. Actually, gray nurse sharks are being managed through programs in public aquariums, through zoo and aquarium associations. There are captive breeding programs for them. Unfortunately, our populations of the Australian populations within zoos and aquariums are quite small and have been in our care for 33 years. So we do have some that were born in our facilities, but it's a small population. Globally, they're one of the most well-represented species in aquariums, and they're mostly coming from the West Atlantic populations, which are quite stable, and they're even doing AI work with them. So there have been successful breeding events or fertilization opportunities that have eventuated into successful pups. So yes, they are being bred, or we're trying to find a way to crack the code on their breeding in captivity as well.
Thank you, Laura. Now, I'm aware that we need to be wrapping up this session, but I believe we also have a couple of spotter shark champions in the audience. We have PT, who you acknowledged earlier, and we have Jessie Loffel. That one is for Jessie. Valerie, can I give you that to you? Is Jessie here?
Oh, thank you.
Jessie, there we go. Sorry, I missed you. If you'd like to come and receive your book from Valerie.
Jessie's.
Hi, Jessie. My pleasure.
Thank you for being such a champion. And PT as well.
There you are, PT.
I think PT has added hundreds and hundreds of photographs to Spot a Shark.
Yeah, PT's going crazy and I love it. She's like, I contacted her because she uploaded like 3 or 4 and then she's gone crazy. I think you're up to 1,000 now, right? Yep. And wow. Jessie is great because you're young. Like, this is the generation I want to tap into. Yes, young, I love it. And you're going out there and you're taking great photos and you identified loads of new ones that we didn't have in the database. So, awesome work.
A couple of things as we wrap up. Firstly, can you join me in thanking the amazing Valerie Taylor AM, Professor Adam Stow, Captain Gordon Scott, and Sarah Han-De-Beaux.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Ocean Ideas. Please make sure to share it with your networks and help us in our mission to turn ripples of action into waves of change for our blue planet.